So now I want to talk about the phases of development. So I've kind of alluded to it a little bit already when we talk about our stationary phase. So our stationary phase is what you saw me back there with the players, and where it's all quite stationary, punch pass type activities and things like that. If that's your place to start, then that's a good place to start. My warning is, don't stay there too long. I think what we've done, we've relied so much on this stationary work that our players have forgotten how to run, catch, pass. So we get a lot of players are comfortable stationary, but as soon as we bring some movement in, the kind of technique goes away a little bit, because there's so many other things we have to take into consideration. Stationary is a good place, don't get me wrong, and I would always do it, okay? But I'd try and get into the moving stages a lot sooner, and passing waves, as I've just mentioned, are probably the easiest and the quickest way to get to that. When we get into the moving stage, you might want to vary how you move. It's about your timing. When you run, catch, pass, timing is all important. When you leave, who do you get your cues off when you leave? So simple things like that is you need to know, and that's where it comes back to the right at the very beginning when I said about getting set early. And also the next thing was about communicating with the person, knowing that person who you're going to be working with. So all I need to worry about is the person who's going to give me the ball. So if it's in a passing wave, I don't really have to worry about the guy next to me, because he's the one that's going to give me the ball. So I just need to make sure I know exactly where they are at all times, then I can get my timing right off that.
Sorry, Dave, can I ask a quick question?
Yep, sure.
And this question is, when do you start emphasising the cues of the defence as well with the pass? Or do you leave that later in the learning development, or do you discuss that when you get into moving? What sort of cues you'd be looking for to then pass it?
That's a bloody good question, Matt. What I think is you've got to know your crew, so know your group a little bit. So you might even start with it. You know, there's no reason why you can't just bring in that's why I have the randomized back stage in there too, or even the controlled stage where you can control a little bit of defense and just see how they react. Let's face it, if they're really good at it, that might, move your progress up a little bit quicker, but also it's nice to know if they're not going to be good at it early too, So I kind of try and get a feel for the crew I'm working with, and if I think they can handle it, I'll throw it in there. Or if I'm totally unsure, then I might throw it in early as well. Does that kind of help at all, Matt?
Yeah, it does. And would you use, to help sort of build those techniques and help build that development, you use different balls, like a heavy ball, to help with that sort of fizz of things, or do you sort of stay away from that?
No, I've used them in the past. I wouldn't get into them too early, because we want to really nail that technique, making sure that technique is really good before I brought in the heavy balls. But no, and I'll talk about it later. Like, I use all sorts of gadgets, and there's bands, and get players standing on Swiss balls or Bose balls and things like that to try and get our balance as well. So no, be creative, mate. If you feel a weighted ball's going to help to put that bit of zip in, as long as your technique's right, I think you'll be okay.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
No worries, buddy. Moving on, fellas, to the last two there are controlled environment and randomized. So a controlled environment might be just what Matt and I were talking about there. I might deliberately bring in pad holders to offer some resistance, or it could be, if it's just purely a scenario-based thing, it might be we might be wanting our players to run pop passes or throw missed passes. So we might be a phase of our development. We've got our pass pretty decent. We're quite happy with it. We want to introduce different passes like circle ball passes, cutout passes, and things like that. And then you try and have some simulation in there and how you're going to use them, so the players understand. Also, it's a good time to get your timing right. The final is randomized, because so many people I've been lucky to talk to some really smart coaches lately. And I don't mean smart coaches by guys who are coaching All Blacks and the Wallabies and the British Lions or any of these guys. I mean just bloody good coaches who know what they're talking about. Okay, and they're doing a lot of game-based stuff, which I'm quite excited about. Wasn't such a big deal. I think we were doing in my day, but we didn't realize what it was. Didn't have a name. Now we've called it something, and I think it's a good thing to bring some randomized aspects into your training, because part of all of our schoolwork, and particularly Catch Pass, is our decision making and our reaction times, and that's where we can learn some of that from games. Okay, so I'm making sure there's some, and plus it's a fun element and can lift the players up and get a bit of spark going, because it can be a bit of a trudge sometimes.